What are some other well-intentioned things that parents do that are unintentionally creating picky eaters?
We had many times where we ran out of restaurants, you know, to the hospital because
Yeah.
she had a reaction to something that they said wasn't in the food, and it was. I think one of the reasons kids do refuse food is the food makes them feel terrible, and they don't have the language to say that.
What's one piece of parenting advice around nutrition that almost everyone believes, but you think is completely wrong?
Oh, this is a really great question. Oh, that kids need to have milk.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Barbell Therapy. I'm your host, Dr. Brett Scott. Today on the episode with me, I have Megan from Feeding Little. Megan, I forgot. How do you say your last name? Is it McNamee?
McNamee, yeah, it's annoying.
McNamee?
Yeah.
Okay.
For that, yeah.
So Megan has a giant following on Instagram you have like 1.8 million followers, and you have a great page all about helping parents navigate feeding their kids and childhood nutrition. And she has one of the leading resources here on navigating that, from starting solid foods, picky eaters, and building healthy relationships with food. She's been able to help probably millions of families at this point with your work, at least online even, to make things less stressful, practical, and evidence-based, I would assume.
Yeah.
And we're going to go through today childhood nutrition, picky eating, common misconceptions, and how parents can set their kids up to live a lifetime as a healthy adult and have good nutrition habits, because a lot of these things start when we're kids. And, you know, I was someone that grew up, I was overweight. I never liked the way I looked as a kid. And, you know, you never really talk about those things when you're a kid to your parents, but something even today that like I still think about, and I'm partly a conscientious eater because of that stuff. And we're going to get into some of this stuff. So Megan, when you started this, what were the problems you might have been having in your own life with your kids, or, you know, what things were you seeing out there that made you start Feeding Littles?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been asked about our origin story a lot, which is kind of a longer, cool story that I won't get into. But essentially, I started this with my now retired business partner because we wanted to share our expertise that we knew that we were using with our own clients at a larger scale, because we knew parents were stressed out about feeding their kids the way. And for the record, I should say I am a dietitian. I have my master's in public health nutrition as well. I'm a certified intuitive eating counselor. I'm not just a rando, because there's a lot of randos on the internet nowadays.
I should have put that in the intro. Yes.
Okay. I like to put that out there because dietitians I'm not licensed in my state. We don't have licensure here. And so you can it's a really gray area, you know, as to how people are talking about nutrition. So I do have qualifications to talk about it, but I feel like we all eat, right? So it's relevant to every single person, and we all have our own experiences with food. And a lot of people grew up with a kind of messed up home life around food. You know, it's like, don't get fat, but then you're forced to clean your plate, right? Or you can't have cookies, and then you're finding yourself binging cookies in the cupboard. And parents don't. A lot of my peers didn't want to raise their kids in the way they were raised around food, but they didn't know how to do it otherwise. There was no model for them. And so I had been training in intuitive eating and kind of helping people heal their relationship with food. But I realized as I got into teaching parents about baby-led weaning or self-feeding, this was literally like 13 years ago when I started this, I was like, well, this is essentially intuitive eating for babies. It's instead of us being in control of how much food goes in their mouth, it's them being in control. It's them listening to their hunger and fullness cues. It's us trusting that they're going to get enough to eat as they get older, instead of forcing them to take 3 more bites. It's us trusting that if your 2-year-old is suddenly ravenous and wants to eat a ton, that they're probably going through a growth spurt, and let's, you know, allow them to eat more and kind of let them dictate how much of that food that they want to eat. It was inspired kind of by my own journey going through motherhood as a mom, and just having kids myself and teaching what I was doing with my own kids and what I've done with my clients for many years. So the internet can be a rough place. Social media can have its pluses and cons, but one thing I'm very thankful for is the ability to reach so many people in this way and kind of change the trajectory of how they handle food in their own families so differently than, you know, how it would have been potentially handled otherwise. I think that's really cool.
Was there a moment in time where you thought, or maybe something you saw or heard, or, you know, trends of just realizing like everything we've been teaching parents, or everything parents have been doing, with their kids around nutrition is just completely wrong?
I wouldn't say wrong. I would just say it was quite eye-opening to become a parent and compare what I had learned from what's ideal in feeding kids versus what's real in feeding kids. You know, I learned all of these things in school about this is what should be on their plate and these are the nutrients they need. And I was, had this kind of idealistic view, like, well, my kids are going to eat this way because I'm going to, I love to cook and I love to make these things for them. And I wasn't in a place where I wasn't, I knew I was going to eventually give them chicken nuggets and fries and stuff here and there because I think that's part of joy and experience of eating, but it wasn't going to be for every meal necessarily. And I remember actually having my own, when she hit one, my first kid, I was like, well, she's not eating anything I want to give her. Okay. And this is around the time when I met my now retired business partner, Judy, and she's a feeding therapist. I learned about what to put on the plate. I didn't learn how to get them to eat it. And there's a big difference. And I think it's very humbling going from thinking we're going to have all of this control and this influence. And we do have a lot of influence, but thinking that we want our kids to eat a certain way so they absolutely will. And usually the tighter controller we have around it, the more they push back, right? Because that's kind of the only autonomy kids have is like what they can eat. Their schedule is so, they get up when we say, they go to bed when we say, they nap, they have, daycare and preschool and all these things. And it's kind of an arbitrary schedule in their minds, but they can control what they put in their mouth at dinner time. And that can turn into a really big battle. And so I think it's humbling for parents to realize the more I force this and push this, the more they push back, and it doesn't make it any better.
So what you're saying is a lot of picky eating behaviors comes from, it's a control aspect, and it's the more a parent tries to control it, the more it can come out.
It can make it worse. Absolutely. Like we have this, it's kind of a weird thing in the US. Like we have this epidemic of picky eating that a lot of people in other cultures don't say that they have. And I still am struggling to fully understand it because I think it's really multifaceted. But I think we get so stressed about our kid if they don't eat, the one thing we put on the plate, and then we thus turn around and make them something else and become short order cooks because we care, because we don't want our kids to go hungry. We're so afraid of our kid experiencing any level of hunger that then they learn, well, if I don't need to eat this because she's just going to make me mac and cheese. He's going to make me mac and cheese for dinner. Why would I eat that if I'm going to wait and get whatever I want? And it gets really hard because then it becomes a cycle for parents. And now they're making 2 meals every time they make dinner. And that sucks. That's hard.
So there's that. What are some other well-intentioned things that parents do that are unintentionally creating picky eaters?
I think people get into a rut with what they serve. So it's kind of like there's this old joke that I think goes around the internet all the time that like you go to Costco, your kid samples something, they love it. You buy the 14-pound pack of it, and then you get home and they don't want to eat it at all. We think, they ate it one time and thus I'm now going to serve it for every meal forever and always because it makes me feel good that they're actually eating this fruit or vegetable or protein food. And then they get really sick of it and then they don't want to touch it ever again, kind of thing. We go really hard on the very few foods that we offer. We, as parents, so many of us, like we figure out what our kids will eat and then we don't serve anything else beside that. We don't expose them to more things. We kind of stick with like the 2 vegetables we know they'll eat. And the problem with that is that it continues to create more picky eating because kids only learn to eat what they're served over time. So, if you see green beans and the first time you see them, you touch them, the second time you put them in your mouth, you spit it out, but eventually you eat them, you're only going to get there by exposure to green beans. You're not going to get there by never seeing them at all. So that's another thing. Parents, obviously we're worried about waste. Parents don't want to eat food or make food that their kid won't eat. But I always say, make things that your whole family enjoys. You decide the menu, yes, with some of your kids' input, but like if you got to serve some variety that your whole family likes and put one piece of it on their plate. If they don't eat it, it's not wasted. You can have that one piece. You can keep it for leftovers yourself, but it's not like you wasted a whole bunch of food by giving them a little tiny bit of it. And then they're also more likely to eat it because one piece of food is not very overwhelming to a kid. Sometimes we kind of, that's another thing I think parents mistakenly do. They assume that kids eat the same amount that we as adults eat. And
Hmm.
usually a portion size for a kid, now I don't even really like portion sizes, right? Because you go off your hunger, right? But a starting place is like what a quarter of what you would serve yourself.
Hmm.
So we put a huge amount of food on these plates and then we're like, here you go. And that's like you walking up to a mountain of things that you may or may
Yeah.
not really want to eat. And you're like, I'm good. I don't need this. Instead, if we keep it really tiny, like really small amounts of food, it's a lot more approachable and they're more
Hmm.
likely to eat it because of that. And then if they don't, you haven't wasted a ton of food. You can always give them
Hmm.
more if they want more, but I think we're
Yeah.
kind of shooting ourselves in the foot with this a little bit.
And so what about when maybe the kid isn't hungry at dinner and it's 7 o'clock and then like 9 o'clock, like I'm hungry. Do you let them
Yeah.
then go back and eat the food? Like this is that kind of self auto-regulating
Mhm.
thing we were talking about a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yep. So this is a good question, and I think there's a few different answers to it. But because first and foremost, I want parents to like do what instinctively feels good to them, right? If you had a weird night, like this happens all the time when you go to a birthday party or some sort of social function, and your kid is so overwhelmed and like totally not into eating, right?
Hmm.
And then you get home and they're like, oh, I'm starving. Like it's frustrating. There was a ton of food at the party. You're like, what? Are you serious? I always still just feed my kid because I know that they were not at all focused on eating. But that's not the norm in our family. They usually eat dinner because it's been what we've done over and over and over and again as we've served dinner. But there are times, and a lot of families deal with this, where the kid doesn't want dinner. Maybe they had a ton of snacks in the afternoon. Maybe they filled up on a lot of milk. And then now dinner's served, they don't want it, and it's later. They're stalling bedtime, which is a big
Hmm.
tactic. It's not, I mean, people, it's not like a manipulative thing. They just have become smart. They don't want to be alone. So they're like, oh, if I say I'm hungry, like maybe I can get a few more minutes of time with my parents. And, or they might be genuinely hungry because they didn't eat dinner. And if this is like a one-off thing and you're like, whatever, go have a banana. I'll do like a boring bedtime. I'll just be like, go have, I'll get you a cheese stick, whatever, but we gotta move along and go to bed. But if it's something that's happening every single night, some parents, want to draw a line like this is what we're having for dinner. We're not having anything after. You can eat it or you don't have to if you don't want to, but this is what we're having. And when you get into that pattern of a more regular like hunger and fullness routine, oftentimes kids kind of figure it out. Sometimes they do go to bed a little hungry because they refuse to eat dinner and they wake up and they have a huge appetite for breakfast.
Hmm.
A lot of parents fear that. They fear like their kid will wake up all night long. Even if they served, all the things their kid likes, there's going to be nights when your child just doesn't eat very much for dinner. And it freaks parents out. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're going to be hungry. They're going to wake up. And it's so interesting. It's rare that they wake up. Usually, if they just didn't want to eat dinner, they didn't feel good, they didn't want it for some reason. And the next morning, their appetite kind of comes back. I think we just kind of we get in our heads so much that we're like good parents make sure that their kids are full when they go to bed and good parents make sure that their kids eat three full well-rounded meals, but kids appetites are weird. And for toddlers specifically, you're still doing your, I mean, most toddlers only eat two decent meals a day, even when they're served three. They
Okay.
oftentimes have one meal that they're kind of meh about, and it's frustrating because you make the food, right? But it is very common for them to be like either too tired or too overstimulated from the day. It's very common, like if they come home from preschool or daycare later in the day, a lot of them are just pooped and they're not in their best, mindsets, and they just don't want to eat. Maybe they have a little cup of milk and they're done. If they're eating that and they're eating snacks and they're growing as expected, that's still usually enough food for them.
Okay. Um, what's one piece of parenting advice around nutrition that almost everyone believes, but you think is completely wrong?
Oh, this is a really great question. Oh, that kids need to have milk to meet
Okay.
their needs. I am not anti-milk in any sense.
Hmm.
I am a dairy food. I love cheese. I love dairy foods. But a lot of kids,
Same.
we grew up, I think they're delicious. And I think they're a very convenient way to get calcium, vitamin D, small quantities of vitamin D, protein, etc. Like I was on the cottage cheese train way before it was a trend. Like I've always been a good culture fan, man. I was like, this stuff is actually good though, guys. If you hate good culture, try this. But I think because especially in the 80s and 90s, a lot of us grew up with like milk pushing parents. And it was like you
Hmm.
had to have a glass of milk with every single meal, at
Yep.
least in my house. And I just remember even like it was the fat-free milk because I lived in like the 90s diet culture world. And I
Skim
remember we'd
milk.
have like
Yep.
skim milk with like apple slices for breakfast and an Eggo waffle. And I'm like, ugh, like the taste combo was terrible, but we had to drink it.
Hmm.
Your kid doesn't need to drink milk to get their nutrient needs met. Now, if you want to serve milk, it's a convenient way. I'm not saying don't, but there's a lot of kids that refuse milk and it stresses parents out so much. Like, oh my gosh, they don't drink milk, they won't drink it. I will say, like, now it's interesting that over the last 15 years or so, I've seen a really big change where parents are starting to realize, like, oh, if I just give them like dairy foods and high calcium foods, they can still get their needs met. But we just had this thing, it's probably from the Dairy Council, like, all these commercials we watched growing up. We had this thing where you had to have 24 ounces of milk, 3 glasses every single day to get your needs met. And it's just not true. You can get those met through dairy foods and non-dairy foods. And, it's okay if water is their primary beverage. They're going to be fine. One thing I always say with that, a caveat, every kid for the most part, most likely needs a vitamin D supplement. It's really hard to get enough vitamin D in food alone. Yes, we want kids outside and playing, but usually the time that's best to get UV light for vitamin D, exposure is from 11 to 2. It's when I live in Arizona. It is 113 degrees today. I'm not outside at this time.
Hmm.
So to get enough vitamin D through milk, kids would have to drink 6 cups of milk. That's 48 ounces. That's
Wow.
way too much milk. Way too much milk. They would never eat food. So it's really hard to get it through food alone for kids. So regardless of whether your kid drinks milk or not, we still need a vitamin D supplement for most kids, even after infancy. It's usually 600 IUs per day. A lot of multivitamins have them built in, but have vitamin D built into them. But your kid doesn't have to drink milk if they don't want to, and they can still get their needs met just fine. My kids never drank milk. They just didn't like it.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I loved milk as a kid and I drank a ton of it, but then like later on, so where I'm going with this is we see now like when I was a kid, I'm 34. There was no oat milk, there was no almond milk, there was no cashew milk. Like
Yeah.
these things were not existent. Um, and no one had these dairy allergies, gluten allergies, nut
Right.
allergies like we do now. So what is that all about? And it's like, are kids, resistant to eating it because they're intuitively like realizing their body might just not like it, like we
Right.
might force it on them, or um yeah, and like I hear now too, like a lot more babies are having like food allergies and stuff. I just had a patient who was telling me like his daughter was colic, but they then found out or figured out she had a dairy allergy the whole time.
That's a great question. I wish if I knew the answer to that, I think I would be a very wealthy human. I don't know why. I think they're trying to figure out why our allergy rates are higher. One specific thing that we do know that we actually do have data on now, and like baby and toddler allergy specifically, and this is what I do in my job all the time, is in the early 2000s, we changed our recommendations as our allergy rates were starting to increase. Again, not really sure why. We said, don't give babies allergenic foods. When I was in
Is,
college in
is
the
this the
early
peanut
2000s,
butter story?
peanut
Like
butter,
we
egg,
delayed it.
yeah, we delayed it. So I was taught in college, like as training to be a dietitian, do not give babies or toddlers peanut butter till age 3.
And
When
then it
I
got
was
worse,
then
right?
It got way worse. Like if you look at Israel's allergy rates, because they would give babies bamba, which is like a peanut butter puff snack. It's kind of like a cultural food for them.
Sounds
They're
delicious.
they exist here. They're amazing. If you babies were eating bamba very frequently, and then they were advised not to give it to them, and guess what? Their allergy rates for peanut butter were very low, and then they skyrocketed after that. They changed the recommendations in the early, like at 2011, that's when they started realizing like, this is not a good idea. There were some papers coming out at that time. I started teaching this class in 2013. And so much of what I was doing in the class was convincing parents to talk to their doctors about, no, the guidelines are shifting now. We do need to do frequent and early exposure. And they finally, everything kind of finally caught up. Took many years, but now I know that physicians are very strongly encouraging early, frequent exposure to the top 9 allergenic food groups. So that's not just peanut butter. It's also dairy, soy, wheat, eggs, finned fish, shellfish, like tree nuts, so almonds and cashews, and then sesame as well. So it's a lot of different allergenic foods, top allergenic foods, that they cause 90% of food allergies in the US. But you know, those can significantly, that exposure can significantly reduce your risk of an allergy, but it doesn't mean it eliminates your risk. Sometimes you do all the things, quote unquote, right. This is what's so frustrating for parents. They're like, I did it all. I did what you told me. I did the things. I'm like, yeah, but we don't have a 0 allergy rate. There's no way for us to like, as a population, get down to 0 because we don't understand it well enough. So we do know things like, you know, making sure that you eat allergenic foods in pregnancy and if you're breastfeeding can help reduce risk. And we know that early frequent exposure can help. And there's so many cool immunotherapies being studied and being used right now to help people with allergies. Like I think in our lifetime, we will see a cure for allergies because of how aggressively they're being studied and there's so much technology around it. But I don't know if we know the complicated mix as to why they occur. And they're scary. I grew up, my sister had a severe allergy growing up and it was really hard. Like we had many times where we ran out of restaurants, you know, to the hospital because she had a reaction to something that they said wasn't in the food and it was. So I get it. I totally, you know, have lived that life with it. And but yeah, I do think kind of back to your question, I don't know if we know why their rates are higher, but I think one of the reasons kids do refuse food is the food makes them feel terrible and they don't have the language to say that. And that's one reason why I love like giving them a choice. You still decide what's served. They decide how much of what you serve that they eat. And that gives them that autonomy and that building of like innate self-trust. Like I want my kid, if they have a gut feeling, to listen to that. That is so important now that I have, you know, preteen teenager as they're getting into this world where they're going to have to make hard decisions. I want them to get a feeling in their body that says, do not do this. And they trust it and they listen to it. And that's tied back, in my opinion, to letting them build that trust in themselves in so many different ways, including what their body says about food. If it feels yucky, if they're full, I'm not pushing it. I'm letting them stop when their body says yes to stop.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, how many of these bad behaviors like lead on into the adult life or
it's hard. Yeah. I mean, if you like, it's really hard to unlearn overeating. And I say overeating as in like eating beyond what your body wants, right? What feels good in your body. Nowadays, I think the fitness content out there makes like a normal human just eating normally. That looks like overeating nowadays, right? But I don't prescribe to, you know, that every woman should be eating like 1,400 calories. I think there's some total insanity happening out there with this like thin spo crap going on. But I think we do learn overeating, or we teach our kids overeating accidentally when we're fearful that they're not getting enough to eat and we make them eat like an arbitrary amount of food.
Yeah.
Like 3 more bites.
So yeah, like how many of the millennials of my generation are probably now on GLPs because we've lost the sense of mindful eating?
Yes.
And just we learned to just shut that signal off and we can't know when we're full or when we're hungry. And we just choose to eat because mom and dad told us we need to eat breakfast, we need to eat lunch, we need to eat dinner, we need to eat this much at this time.
And it all was done like with a really good intention behind it, right? People didn't want their kids to like, because, you know, it's interesting, like even my mom was more nutrition conscious, like, and, you know, into like, you know, the fat-free craze and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like in the 80s and before that, people were not nearly as aware of nutrition as they are now. And so it was
Hmm.
kind of like give the kid a hot dog and like move along, right? Like we ate Doritos and juice for lunch and like kind of move, not to say that that was like ideal either. But I think we're now so nutrition conscious and we're so worried about what we eat, and we kind of put that on our kids, and then we inadvertently teach them to eat more than their body needs, and we teach them to override those fullness signals, and
Hmm.
then they get older, and we also do it in accidental ways too. Oh, you're sad, let's go get ice cream. Oh, you're potty
Mm.
training, you want a reward, get M&Ms, right? And these are very normal things. I'm not saying that this is like you shouldn't do these if you don't want to, but
But
or if you want to. I just know what we easily tie. It's very easy for us to tie like self-soothing and emotional regulation with eating. And eating can be an absolutely like it can be for celebration and reasons, not just for hunger. But if that's our only way of dealing with difficult behavior or difficult feelings, then we don't have ample tools. Like eating still in and of itself solves the problem of hunger. It doesn't
hmm
really solve the problem of sad. It doesn't solve the problem of anxious. It solves the problem of hunger. And we have really confused those things. So I'm an elder millennial. I am older than you, but I'm technically a millennial. And I do think in our generation, we have a lot of us, and our parents also had this problem, and their parents had this problem too. Especially if there was food scarcity. My grandma was, a wartime mom, and the woman had 9 refrigerators full of food because she was so scared of food scarcity from that era of her life. And I guess she wasn't a wartime mom. I guess no, it was like right after the war. She grew up in the war. And it was like this food pushing thing all the time because that's how she was taught to show love and care for somebody. But unfortunately, it causes us to like ignore those signals. Like we don't want to eat until we're uncomfortable, stuffed all the time. That's our body trying to tell us something. Like we
hmm
want to be comfortably full. You
Yep.
don't eating till fullness is not wrong or bad. It's just over full where you're like, I feel sick. I feel like I have to lay down now, like that Thanksgiving full. So
Yeah.
many of us get there every meal because we see the food on the plate and we're like, I feel guilty if I leave. I'm wasting it if I leave it there.
hmm
So they make themselves eat beyond that level. And that's just we're trying to kind of rewire those signals with parents and give them permission to let their kid decide how much to eat and like listen to their body. And again, you've probably, Brett, I'm sure you've eaten more than you need, in the last year, you've probably eaten too much and been like, oh, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Certainly.
It's easy. It happens to all of us. I've done it too, where I was like, oh, that was like 1 or 2 bites too many. And now I'm kind of uncomfortable. But I try to tune in a little bit more the next time because, again, I'm just trying to listen to the signals that my body is giving me. And
hmm
it's going to be different every.
Um. So now, dealing with children. So we talked a little bit about the genetics part too. We're all different, and I used this analogy the other day of one of my clients wants to like completely drastically change the shape of every part of their body, right? They want a bigger butt, smaller waist, more defined shoulders, this and that. I'm like, okay. And I train Olympic weightlifters, and we all come in all different shapes and sizes. Everyone trains the same. Everyone's like performance, nutrition plans are relatively the same for the sports we're doing and stuff. But there are people that are morbidly obese that do it. I have people that are chiseled that look like bodybuilders that do it. I have people that look like just your average dad bod that are super strong and fit and do it. And
Yep.
I said to someone the other day, I go, and I have 2 dogs. I have a very lean, psychotic boxer, and I have a sluggish pit bull lab mix who's like very low energy, but they get the same amount of exercise. They eat the same exact food at the same exact time every day. One of them is very lean, and my boy Jax is a little more husky.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that, like you said, like 80% of this can be genetics,
Yes.
but we do have a childhood obesity epidemic still. And how does a parent tactfully get their kid, like maybe their kid is overeating and they don't want the kid to, how do they, but you don't want your kid to eat too much food. and you need to step in somehow. How does someone do that successfully?
This is a really good question. I want to preface this that I very strongly encourage people that are stressed about this to first and foremost read the book Fat Talk. It's by Virginia Soul Smith. It's one of my favorite resources. It describes a more like aware way to raise a child in a bigger body because it's so complicated. And we were talking before we recorded, like I grew up as a pretty big kid that I'm now almost 6 feet tall. You might not be able to see from where I'm sitting, but I'm very tall. And my genetic predisposition is to like grow out and then up. So my kids are kind of following that as well. So in our preteen, early teen years, we put on more weight, and then I grew 6 inches in 6 months.
Wow.
And I also lost 15 pounds. Just like
Wow.
went like this. Woo!
Yeah.
And it was just a weird thing. It was super weird. And my husband was kind of the same way. He's 6'4". And I really, really love referring people to that book because I think it gives you really tangible, like informed language and tools to use. I also strongly encourage people to work with a dietitian who is like intuitive eating based. We're not putting kids on diets. We're not doing this like huge restrictive thing. It doesn't help. The standard of practice, if kids are growing faster, maybe than what's expected for their body, they're putting on weight faster, is to make sure that we have the behaviors and like the systems at home as best as we can. And I can describe what that is. But instead of worrying about like weight loss, we're trying to get them back to like a more regular pattern of intake and exercise so that they can grow into their body. Because eating disorders are the most deadly of all mental disorders. And we are very, very high risk of kind of walking a child into an eating disorder. If we start saying, well, you're fat, you need to lose weight, your body is a problem. Children start, really questioning their own self-worth and becoming really self-loathing if all the trusted adults around them are telling them that their body is a problem, and even their pediatrician. The AAP has like guidelines about how you talk about this with parents because it's so sensitive, because it's something that is such a high risk of going the wrong direction. And it's something that I feel very, very passionate about because as a kid that had a bigger body, even though my parents were always so positive and so supportive of me, the people around me that used to make fun of me and the way I felt so yuck about myself because of my peers sent me down the disordered eating path as well. And, it's such a delicate balance. It's like me giving you an answer is not nearly complete enough. Like there's so much more to this. But that's why I'm saying read that book. If you are listening and you're like, I'm worried about my kids' weight, I'm worried about what's going on with their size, just please read Fat Talk. It is such a great resource for so many people. No matter what size your child is, there are behaviors that we know can help kids grow up with a healthy relationship with food and grow in the way that like is kind of intended for their body. So some of us are going to be bigger. Some of us are going to be smaller. Some of us are going to kind of go like this as we get older. I guess this is an audio medium. You can't see my hands going up and down, but it's a roller coaster.
It'll be on video.
Yes. Okay, good. We will watch the video as well. Family meals are huge. First and foremost, family meals when you can. It doesn't have to be dinner. It doesn't have to be home cooked even. Anytime that you can sit and eat together and form connection over the dinner table is one of the primary ways that we can help raise kids with a healthy relationship with food and their body. There's so many statistics that support family meals. And people hear this and they get like really start to feel really guilty. Like, I don't do this. And then they're like, well, screw it. I'm a bad parent. No, some schedules will not allow for family meals, and that's okay. Maybe you can just sit and connect over a snack one of these days, or maybe a family meal to you looks like once a week you're sitting together. But when our kids sit and watch other adults in their life eat, they model the behavior of what they're watching, and they model the language and, customs and everything else. But when it comes specifically to nutrition, if you want your child to eat well and eat vegetables and eat, a variety of things that you want to eat, they need to see you eating those things. So family meals become like a really crucial part of that whenever you can. Access to safe play. That's super, super big and important. You know, a lot of kids, and unfortunately, there are so many unsafe right now. Like kids don't have. We as millennial parents don't feel comfortable sending our kids out into neighborhoods, sending them on their bikes like we did growing up. Like I'm not going to send my kid riding a bike 5 miles away. That is what I grew up doing. There is
Mm-hmm.
no way I will send my 10 or 13-year-old 5 miles away from my house. We have busy streets around us. Yes, I let her go biking and we go biking together and she can go a little bit, but we're not doing like we don't have the safe world that we used to have where kids were out until 10 o'clock at night on the summer nights, you know, and we didn't know where they
Yeah.
were. Parents didn't even know where we were. That's not responsible anymore. And in some places it might be, but like at least where I live, that's not what I would do. It's also a billion degrees here in Arizona. So like summer just looks different for,
Yeah.
you know, when I grew up in Minnesota. Um, but anytime we can involve them in safe play, whether it's structured, unstructured, you know, one thing we do in my house, like we play with balloons a lot. My kids are volleyball players and they're obsessed with hitting balloons because balls kept injuring things in our house. So now we do balloons, but they'll do that for hours. You know, anytime you can have them up and moving and encourage joyful movement is awesome. So maybe that's walking together. Maybe that's, you know, family dance party. They see you working out. Maybe you're going on like scooters or bikes or whatever. Anytime they can participate in that is awesome. You know, sports are, I'm a big proponent of organized sports for kids. I think it teaches leadership and respect and disappointment. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many valuable lessons, especially when you get to like a higher level. But it's expensive, right? And you have to have a schedule to be able to accommodate it. So even if you're not into, if your kid's not into sports, just making habits as a family of, you know, moving together in a way that is fun and enjoyable for you will help them set those patterns up for longer in their life. Water as a primary beverage is great. Obviously some families, you know, do milk, maybe they do juice or maybe they do soda, but if we can really focus on water as a primary beverage, it's going to help your kid get the hydration that they need. Offering a variety of foods at each meal. So notice that I'm not saying like calorie restriction, right? This is
Yeah.
the overarching goals for everyone, independent of size. We're not, you know, giving our skinny kid the ice cream and not giving it to our bigger kid. Because guess what? Guess who's going to be in the ice cream later?
The big
When
kid.
it sense the big kid, they sense restriction, right?
Yep.
So we still apply the same tools to everyone, but it's about like setting behaviors that are good for everyone. It's good for all of us to move, barring, you know, medical issues. It's good for all of us to be eating more fruits and vegetables. It's good for all of us to be like eating meals that we maybe cook together from home. Um, you know, this is so complicated because I think our own feelings get tied up into this too. Like, you know, you were saying what you dealt
Yeah.
with as a kid. I dealt with it as well. But I also think it's important for us to talk to our kids about bodies being different sizes and build resilience in that way. My girls have learned they're tall and bigger. They don't really get shamed for their bodies or anything anywhere they go. They're like badass volleyball players, and I think people are in general kind of scared of them, their peers, because they're very strong individuals. But if they were to get somebody talking crap about them, they say things like, "Oh, are you body shaming a child?" And that usually, you know, shuts people up.
Okay.
We talk a lot. Yeah, we talk a lot about in my house, like diet culture and how inappropriate it is for people to comment about other people's bodies in that way, and how you can be strong and look just as you said. I mean,
Yeah.
I think most people have this like fallacy in their brain that if you work out and eat, quote, healthy, you're going to be a thin, at like, you know, you're going to look like one specific way. And that
Yeah.
is just not true when you work with enough people.
Well, it's like
There is
I've never.
so much body diversity.
Yeah, and it's like I think the quote I gave the person the other day was like, "You're never gonna find a skinny English bulldog, and you're never gonna find a fat like greyhound race dog. Like
No,
genetics
they're just,
can."
that's what they are.
Yeah.
Exactly. So and that's the same thing with kids. Like there's, you know, certain kids that are going to be bigger and there's certain kids that are going to be, you know, it's interesting being around so many kids and their peers. I get to see, eating habits because kids will come over and I'm kind of the house set. We like to cook a lot and we'd like to, try new foods at my house. Kids, I think, have this kind of like, well, I'm going to try them for Megan because I know this is what she does. And I'm like, you don't need to, I'm not forcing anyone to try anything. Like if you don't want to if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's okay. But it's funny to watch, kids eating behaviors, and some will eat so much and they'll be like the thinnest kid ever, right? And some will eat very little and bigger. Our bodies are not the same. Like our personal chemistries are so different. And just because a person is in a bigger body, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's unhealthy for them or that they have unhealthy habits. It's so interesting when you actually work. It's like people have to get outside their like N of one, right? And just like their own experience. When you start to work with so many people, you see it. There is so much diversity in how our bodies are meant to be. So I think it's a very long answer to your short question, but I think if you're worried about your child's weight, absolutely talk to your physician, talk to a dietitian, read Fat Talk, and know that like it's all about the behaviors that you're setting up at home. The more you hone in on like trying to restrict them and put them on a diet, especially if you're like using that language or you're singling them out, it usually backfires, makes it worse.
Yeah. And with the pediatricians, is there something you wish they would spend more time discussing with parents? Or on the flip side, is there something you think a lot of pediatricians get wrong when it comes to giving nutrition advice?
I think pediatricians are in like a really rough spot because they have about 10 minutes to go over literally everything. Like when you go in for a well check, it's like safety, they talk about car seats, and then they're like, your home safe, speech, health, behavior, learning. Like it's like there's so many things that they have to cover, and then they also have to do a physical exam and make sure that you're getting your questions answered. So I feel really bad for pediatricians. I feel like if they wanted to do a well check that was incredibly thorough, it would probably have to be an hour long, and no insurance company is going to pay for that. And so they're kind of triaging what is coming up as most important. And so I personally think that's the biggest issue, is that they don't have enough time. Like they don't have enough time to really delve into this. I do wish that when they started to see concerning feeding behavior, I would love if more pediatricians referred to like a feeding therapist. If you see a child that is incredibly picky, like eats 20, less than 20 total foods, less than 10 foods, right? These kids are existing on like the same 3 things as the only thing that they're going to eat. It's like, let's give parents some more resources instead of normalizing that, because that's super stressful to have to, like, it's how do you go out to eat? How do you go on a vacation if it's only these specific foods and specific brands? But I do, I wish pediatricians had, obviously more nutrition education. I think that is changing. I have seen more medical schools are putting a bigger emphasis on lifestyle and nutrition. I went to USC for grad school, and at the time I was in the medical school for my MPH. And at the time, the physicians there were only getting 6 hours of nutrition education. And that has to cover tube feeding and TPN and feeding by vein and all of the critical care stuff that is also nutrition related. That's not enough time. And that's such a disservice to these people, these amazing physicians who have to they have to think about so much in these appointments. So I don't know, I have a really big soft heart for people trying to do this in a way with like very few resources and very little time.
Yeah, for sure. I think the same goes for adult care too, in that way.
Yeah.
But it's just, there's so much they have to cover that they can't.
My dermatologist the other day told me that I've been talking about this. I got a little thing removed from my forehead, and she thought it was cancer and was like pretty convinced that it was. And we had multiple biopsies, and it came back not cancer, thank God. But I learned a little bit about that experience, and I had said, how many people do you see in a day? And she said, at least 30 to 35.
Yep.
Can you imagine 30 to 35? How do you even know the difference between any of them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I would be like,
where you don't.
No.
I have 2 more questions for you here before we have to end this. So one of my last ones is, and you kind of mentioned it, it's just kind of crazy of yeah, we don't want to send our kids out into the world now because it's dangerous and there's crazy people out there and things are happening. But there's a lot of dangerous shit now too that kids can get into online. And so for you,
Yes.
how has social media changed childhood, teenage, probably childhood and teenage nutrition, eating behaviors, anxiety, all
Ooh.
that stuff?
Oh, that's a really good question. As somebody that is deeply in the trenches of social media and has seen it from the beginnings of when it started getting really popular. Sorry about that. That's my kid calling me. I can say that
We
part
can pause
again.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I just want to make sure she usually doesn't call me at this time. So as somebody who has seen social media from kind of its infancy, as far as when Instagram started to take off for businesses and stuff, I am highly aware of the dangers of social media. My kids do not have social media. They don't want it. They know how bad it can be for your mental health, especially if you are in any sort of public eye, or if you have a platform of in any way. It can be incredibly harmful. And I think for kids, unfortunately, the algorithm feeds you what you start to consume, whether you're a child or an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start consuming content that is maybe eating disorder oriented, or fitness oriented, or something about aesthetics, right? Like the mewing and the jaw stuff for the boys, and they're getting into all of the like visible abs and all this kind of stuff. I think it can be really dangerous because all of a sudden you're surrounding yourself with images and messages about bodies that need to look a certain way, or that you need to be on this like strict diet that might not be appropriate, right? Because you're getting information from people that might have their own issues with food. You're not getting it necessarily from experts.
Yeah.
So
Because
I'm
even like,
hyper critical of it. Like I'm really scared of social media for kids.
yeah, like even my adults don't realize that most of the fitness influencers they follow are on different performance enhancing drugs. I'm like, yeah, even
Yes.
women take these things too. And they're like,
Yes.
no, they don't. I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
no, women can take steroids. They're just not the same steroids that a man might take to look a certain way. Like,
Yes, and on different medications that influence body size and body comp, and people just don't like. I think people assume that everyone else has it figured out around them except them, right? And
yeah,
um, they look at this like quote unquote aspirational content, and they don't realize like, no, there's like a significant eating disorder going on there, or this woman is actually working out like 4 hours a day. She's just not showing it to you.
and the thing is, like, if a parent or an adult can't figure that out for themselves, comparing themselves to their peers, and maybe listening, you're someone in those shoes. Imagine how that affects a child that can't delineate between
No.
maybe what's reality and what's just social media.
And that's
Because
what, I absolutely agree with you. And one of the things I do with my kids is actually we consume social media content together, because I don't want it to be so off limits that they're like sneaking over to their friend's house, desperate to
yeah,
look at it. Right.
hmm
So we consume, there's certain creators that we like, but we call it out. I call it out for them. I'm like, this is not real. Look at them, quote unquote, living their normal life. Well, they had to set up a tripod. Who's
yeah,
filming this? So if they
yeah,
go up the stairs, the tripod's at the bottom of the stairs, and they have to run up the stairs and film it. They go back and look. Did my butt look good? How did I like that? Was I in the frame? Oh, refilm it. Go up the stairs again. Go back to the phone. Get the phone. Bring it up to the landing now. And now they're doing the same thing for the second half of the stairs. That's what this is. When people
yeah,
are filming their day in the life, it is highly curated, performative content. It is not real life. And I don't think people understand that. And kids
yep,
definitely do not understand that.
nope. All right, you ready for your last question?
I'm ready.
This is a big one.
Uh-oh.
Um, Imagine your children are now adults and they're sitting on a podcast talking about you. What do you hope they
Oh.
would say about the way you raised them?
So my kids have been out of my house for the last 4 days, out of town, so I'm missing them right now. I would
Oh,
hope that they would say above, and I like, I get teary even talking about it, but I would hope they say above and beyond, I was loved unconditionally without question.
awesome.
That's the most important thing to me.
All right, cool.
Hmm.
Um, anything about nutrition that you would want them to say about the way you raise them regarding nutrition?
That like food and eating was about function and feeling. It wasn't about aesthetics. They learned how to eat by how it made their body feel. They learned about nutrition from like an additive, not a subtractive perspective. Um, they became deeply in touch with what their body needed, and they know going into college and beyond how to fuel themselves in a way that feels good to them and is joyful and is not soul sucking, which is how I felt about it for so many years. I would hope that they just have a wildly different perspective about it. It's not ignoring health, it's not ignoring nutrition at all. It's that we can eat foods that we like, that taste good, that also honor our body's needs all at the same time. And we don't need to be afraid of fueling ourselves in that way.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up. And that all of those things are a great take home message for people. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. There's plenty of questions we have too, if we want to come back some other time and do a part 2.
There's, I mean, we could go on forever. Yes.
Yeah. Megan, where can people find you if they want to invest in your resources, your coaching, or, professional opinions and things? Where can they find you?
Sure. So we're at feedinglittles.com. We're on all the socials at Feeding Littles, but mostly on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time. We also have online courses for babies, like 5 to 12 months, and then for toddlers and bigger kids, so 1 to 10 years. And it's kind of where you get all of our expertise bundled into an affordable, like online format. So check it out at feedinglittles.com.
Your website is awesome, by the way.
Thank you. Well, ironically, it's got it updated today. So you are seeing the brand new version of it.
Oh yeah. Like it has a very good look to it, and it's accessible and easily readable. And
thank you. You are the first person probably to see it because it just got updated. So I love that.
I was looking at it earlier today. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time today to discuss some of the stuff. And I hope some of you got some help from this episode. And if anyone wants to reach out to me and has more things they'd like to know from Megan or things on childhood nutrition, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Thank you.
And once again, thanks for coming on.
Thanks. Have a good one.